Coming up on this episode of Once a Duck. So we come out here and immediately get a motion in the backfield, wide receiver, and then toss, trying to get it to the outside of that wide receiver crackdown. And it doesn't matter because they are not having it. All that and more on this next episode.
Where's your favorite place to take college game day? And I say every time, Eugene, Oregon.
That's right, everybody. We are back with a brand new episode of the Once a Duck podcast. I am Sam Schmidt. Sitting across from me, he's bedazzled, he's ducked out, he's looking good. Make it nice and loud for Nick Cody, everybody.
Oh, thank you. I can hear you all out there. I can hear all the clicks of everybody clicking to the next episode of their next favorite podcast. No, it's good to be with you. Thank you for joining us. Hopefully, however you found us, you're following us at Once a Duck on all the regular socials. Follow my man over here at Samuel101TS or myself at Nick R. Cody. But we've got a lot more to talk about than just this podcast because we have a brand new team we've just got to talk about later on in this show that the Oregon Ducks have never faced on the football field before. But, of course, before we talk about that, the results of the all-important trip to the Big House. And we learned a lot about this team, Sam. This week, we learned that this Ducks team could pack it up, go on the road, not only to a place like Purdue, but a place as legendary and famed as the Big House. And you were there. Break it down for us. Let us know what it was like there. What was the atmosphere? And at what point did you know that it was going to be very, very quiet for the rest of the game?
Well, I'll tell you what, Nick. Number one, it was a pleasure to be able to take this kind of a trip out to a historic venue like the Big House. Obviously, Oregon hasn't been out there since 2007. And boy, oh boy, did they get maybe not a similar result in terms of final score, but they got a similar result in terms of what they were really able to do to that building, to that atmosphere. I'll start from the beginning, though. It was a great day in Ann Arbor, Michigan. Beautiful. It was a little frigid in the morning. It's very fun to be able to wake up, realize that you still got an hour and a half of the continental breakfast, and that college game day has yet to begin. So being able to start that day nice and slow, roll out of bed, be able to get in the shuttle to head over to the stadium, all of that before about 12:30, good way to start that day. Once you got out to the stadium, man, it was a pleasure to see so many Duck fans, so many listeners, so many friends of the show out there. Always a pleasure to be able to run into our Oregon football community while out and about, and even be able to intertwine with some of the Michigan community too. There were a lot of really great Michigan fans, a lot of great Michigan legends that were out there walking around. It was so fun to be able to kind of be in an atmosphere that had so much history to it. So it's such a legendary place for the sport in this country, as if it were played anywhere else. But just to be able to explore Ann Arbor, be able to explore what the stadium had to offer, could be out back on the golf course a little bit, walk around the stadium, really see what there was. It was so cool, man. And it was so cool to get inside, again, meet Duck fans, have such a good time in there. And once the game started, I'll tell you what, there were 110,000 people in there. Austin's louder. Austin's louder from start to finish. That place, they got going at times, but that Oregon football team kept the chatter to a minimum. Really just so surgical with how they worked, whether it was the defense forcing 3-and-outs, whether it was the offense just moving the ball down the field with what seemed like relative ease the majority of the game. It was a special afternoon in Ann Arbor, one that I don't think a lot of Duck fans are going to forget for a while.
Well, hey, man, I love the fact that this team took it all and they took it on the road with a message. The Ducks versus them video this week was fantastic and an insight into the program, unlike any other that you're really getting anywhere else. And I used to love that kind of thing. Back in Chip's first year, he was especially good at finding good ways to just unite the team under a single kind of motivating message or thought that week, and then having it executed and showed us like directly on the field, and then being able to go back on the film and show us exactly what he pointed out was exactly true is the best way to build the confidence in your team and your ability to improve. And it makes those practices so much easier to bring to that level they need to be every single time you go out there as a team, especially when you get to November football, where everybody is starting to gel, play their best if you're one of the best teams out there. And you know what? At this point in time, the Oregon Ducks really feel like one of the only teams in the country that's gotten better and better every single week. And the only way to continue it is to have a coach with that kind of leadership and that unifying message for everybody.
And I think when you speak about the improving every week aspect, I think that that's something that you really can't ignore. This Oregon team has, in fact, looked as if they've built upon every single week prior to be able to perform on a weekly basis. Whether it was that game a couple weeks back at Purdue when everyone thought they were going to come out a little bit slow after beating Ohio State. Nope, the exact opposite. Foot on the gas all the way through, be able to perform so well, get that big goose egg victory. Then moving on to Illinois, probably the best 30 minutes of football we've seen out of this Oregon football team. It slowed down in the second half, but I feel like we even saw Oregon respond to that in this game, not taking the foot off the gas, that last drive being one that maybe you didn't have to find the end zone. They were going to find the end zone. They were going to bring out the killer mentality. They were acting as if the Emperor did, in fact, put a thumbs down on the Wolverines. They went in for the kill and they got it. That was the exact type of thing we've been wanting to see from this Oregon team, a team that's really going to be okay with throwing that last punch, throwing that real knockout blow when a team's already on the ropes. They did that this past weekend, and I think that's just another step toward building up to what this team ultimately can be. I think a really, really telling thing that I heard in the stadium when at Michigan was just the fact that late in the second quarters, after Oregon scored another touchdown, a Michigan fan a few rows behind is shaking his head, just went, they're doing to us this year what we did to teams last year. And it's completely what we're seeing so far. And it's just Oregon steamroll their way through really quality opponents.
And we were entertained. I really enjoyed, especially well, we'll get to it in our film breakdown here, but the way our defensive front really set the tone in this game, just basically establishing, hey, nothing's going to be given to you today. Well, aside from a muffed field goal or a punt return, but again, the really essentially the only points gifted to Michigan right there, putting them right there in the red zone in that first drive that they got. That was really the only momentum that they were able to have that we didn't give them. And then again, Coach Lanning coming out there in the second half interview and addressing the reporter saying that he had been quoted as saying the third quarter was their Achilles heel, correcting her and saying he didn't say that, but that doesn't mean it isn't true. The third quarter there was a little bit of a problem, and it was kind of just echoing some things we've seen. And you know what? It's okay when you're able to go and just build up the kind of lead that you were able to sustain with that, really that first half that just put them on ice skates.
Well, and I think that the first half, the way Oregon came out in this game was pretty unbelievable, right? The very first play of the game, we're going to take a look at it in the tape time, but it's Derek Harmon forcing a big tackle for loss, right? Yep. You're able to get them to go 3 and out. You get that ball back. Tez has the nice return up the sideline. And from there, I said the word earlier, but it's just so true. It was absolutely surgical. It's just moving the ball downfield, one play after another. Boom, 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 boom. It's a 12-play drive covering 83 yards. I think you had 2 third downs the entire time, a 3rd and 5 in which Evan Stewart picks up 9, and then a 3rd and goal in which Evan Stewart picks up a touchdown that officially does count. So it's a touchdown that we need to talk about.
Yeah. Yeah, it's also just crazy the way, again, Noah getting the 2 touchdowns in there, even though with just a couple minor touches. Jordan James having another 100+ yard day. It just felt like Oregon was able to take advantage of everything they wanted, except all two real negative plays on the offense the entire day were really the injuries to Tez Johnson and our most experienced lineman up there, our right guard, Marcus Harper. So that's going to be something we're going to have to monitor moving forward with Kawika Rogers stepping in. I hope that's going to be a good fit. I hope he gets a great week of practice in there. And hopefully we're able to get Harper back here at some point this season. And Tez, you never know. Things seem optimistic, but man, when you have a shoulder injury as a wide receiver, I mean, that's really, really tough to come back from. So we're wishing him the best right now. I know he kind of sent the recovery chamber photos out there into the internet sphere there. So we wish Tez the best in his recovery right now. Hope to get him back, hopefully, right now when it comes to the postseason. But for the rest of the season, right now, we got a lot of younger wide receivers stepping up and more I'm excited to see. But another fantastic game. We've already talked about him last week, but Justice Lowe coming up there, stepping up, especially in his ability to block, really, really impressive.
Well, and I think Justice Lowe's been a great example this year of a no block, no rock kind of guy. I mean, he's somebody who's, as a freshman, is coming in with a lot to prove amongst this group. And he's done a really, really good job being able to not just block, but be able to block downfield and have significant plays down there. Being able to really lock in on the defender, keep them where he wants to. I mean, 6 catches, 45 yards. Yeah, that's great. We love to be able to see that. But the way he's able to earn his spot, especially with such a veteran group, is being able to be such a difference maker in those situations where maybe he's not getting the ball, but he's running a great route that's keeping a defender honest to their side of the field, or he's getting a block down that really needs to be had in order to let somebody break one a little bit downfield. He's a guy who I loved. He stepped up the way he has, a guy that I think is a really great transition into our Guys of the Game segment, where I think he's a great candidate.
All right, man. Well, let's step it up. And going into that, I just got to start up. Let's just give it overall to our defensive front. I mean, let's just, instead of having to point out one single guy, you did already mention Harmon, we'll break that play down. But overall, just coming out and performing the same way they have all season, but being able to take that on the road in the big house in a place that is consistently winning or a major candidate for the Joe Moore Award. I mean, that's just great offensive line play consistently right there. And they made their offensive line look like basically an ACC team. And, to come into the Big Ten and do that in your first year, very impressive. Props to everybody up there. Uiagalelei, got to see Birch back a little bit out there, a little bit of a limp. I'm not sure how much, you got to give him limited reps, if any at all. I'd say rest him for the most part. But we had a lot of guys out there. Jamar Caldwell, again, just able to just eat up blocks and, again, have so much wiggle for a guy that size. I am just so impressed all around. Tuioti coming out there off the edge, coming and playing another great game. I mean, this defense overall, they have so much they can throw at you, and all of it starts with their ability to be versatile up there and how they match up in the front seven.
Well, and I think with that front seven that was so damn impressive is that they were able to really, they might not pop off the page at you statistically, but they're able to hold it down so well that a lot of guys that were in the defensive backfield were able to come up and make some big plays. When you look at the leaders on this team tackles wise this week, Bryce Betcher, as usual, number 1. But after that, Kobe Savage, Jabbar Muhammad, Tysheem Johnson. These were all guys who were put in the position to make plays because of how well that defensive front were doing. There were several times throughout this game where a play got stretched all the way to the edge, and either Savage or Muhammad or Johnson ended up coming up to make that play. And a lot of that was because when generally offensive linemen are able to get outside or when they're able to get blocking ahead, that wasn't happening because the Oregon players were doing such a good job of eating all those blocks up, forcing plays to the edge, forcing those players into the arms of guys like Savage, Muhammad, and Johnson. So impressive to see. On the offensive side, obviously, we know Dylan Gabriel had himself a good game, 22 for 34, 294 passing, a touchdown. But I got to give player of the game here, Trayshawn Holden, guy of the game, somebody coming back, had a wacky month of October, to say the least. Had a wacky month with some of the most growth necessary that you'll see in a 3 or 4 week process. Let's just put it that way. and stepping up in place of Tez Johnson. 6 catches, 149 yards, had the big one at the end of the first half down the sideline, had the big one in the second half down the sideline, not to mention a couple of third down pickups as well. He's a guy who we know has all the talent in the world, has the side, has the speed, has the athleticism, all of that. Finally, so good to see him put it together at a time when he really needed to.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, last player of the game, you got to give it to him. It wasn't didn't have to go and necessarily be outstanding, but overall, the control in an atmosphere like that, got to give it to a quarterback and as experienced as Dylan Gabriel, moving up right there to number 2 on what the all-time career passing touchdowns list. So that's going to be something obviously. He hopefully sets here this next week. But just an incredible opportunity and a rushing touchdown on the ground too. That was an awesome play. Really, really love that quarterback draw setup, and just it felt like, especially when you play it back, getting the coaches' calls and the feedback in the headphones there, getting to know exactly what the coaches are calling and how much Will Stein is relying on that play in that situation, and realizing uh, they didn't let the momentum of the negative plays necessarily, whether it was on them or on the referees, didn't let them affect their goal or what they were going to achieve. So that was a really, really big moment.
I completely agree with you. I mean, the way DG has showed up, especially in moments when he's really had to this year on those big pickups, it's been huge. One last guy I want to mention really quickly before we get out of here, before we switch it over to our tape time segment. And it's a guy I don't think has really gotten a shout out on this show at all this year, but Ross James, punter. He had 3 of them, 139-yard, averaging 46.3 a punt, only one of those a touchback. Sometimes in a game like this, you are just playing a little bit of field position with a defense like Oregon has. If you're able to stick somebody deep, stick somebody on their side of their own 20, their side of their own 15, that'll be huge in a game like this. And I think that you can say that it was here. Very nice job from Ross James. Probably one of the best performances we've seen out of him on the season.
Definitely. And when you can limit it to just 3 punts, it makes it nice and easy. But, at some point in this season, especially as we get towards that postseason and here in November football games, man, you never know when you're going to need to rely on those extra inches found in the special teams game. But really, really glad we're finding our stride in all 3 phases of a football game right now. And let's just go ahead and look at the film and break down exactly how that's happening.
That's right, everybody. We are back with our tape time segment. This is where we look at some of the biggest plays from the last Oregon football game, give you our view on them, what the professional here next to me is seeing tape-wise, and what Oregon has to do to either limit these kind of plays or continue to make these kind of plays throughout the season. First one we've got here, Nick, very, very early in the ball game. One that I think really set the tone for the kind of game this was going to be. And it is a big play by Derek Harmon on 1st and 10, literally just 7 seconds into this ball game.
Yeah, absolutely. What I love about this right here is Michigan spreading it right there out on the first play, hoping that they can find some kind of advantage there in the run game by getting this defense spread out. Immediately what you have to identify is the 2 high safeties, both deep. Recognize with that, they're not going to be bringing any necessary extra pressure here, 3 down linemen. And so initially right here, most teams, you're thinking this kind of offensive formation, you're probably expecting some kind of pass. But this is Michigan, and we know that hasn't been their most effective motif, not even this year, but even going back to their most successful year. So we come out here and immediately get a motion in the backfield, wide receiver, and then toss, trying to get it to the outside of that wide receiver crackdown. And it doesn't matter because they are not having it. Especially a guy like Derek Harmon. This is a guy that's been in Michigan State. He has seen these Big Ten offenses. He has played Michigan in big rivalry games, much bigger than the rivalry Oregon has with Michigan. And he brought it with him, and he brought the energy from play one. That is a tone setter right there. And that's the kind of play that is why I have to say our entire defensive line gets that Player of the Game award this week.
Well, and I mean, I think that you describe it the best way possible in terms of clearly seeing a guy who's used to this type of look. I mean, I just think the way that he even just comes off the line of scrimmage here is so impressive. Just immediately stepping up into the guard right there. He knows exactly what's going to be coming, sees Gus Edwards in the backfield, knows what happens when a guy like that gets the ball, just immediately gets in there, blows up the play. And as I said earlier, just really sets the tone for the type of game this is going to be with a play like that right here. I think that Oregon had a lot of those type of plays throughout the game, and I think our second play is a really good example of that. With about 5:44 left, first quarter, Oregon, they have a third down situation here, and really Oregon didn't have a ton of sacks on the game. Really, if you look at those numbers for Oregon, sacks wise, you're going to maybe be a little disappointed, just wondering, hey, where's that pass rush we'd been seeing the last few games at? Well, don't worry. It was there. They were absolutely getting the tackles for loss. They were absolutely being in the backfield, causing problems. It just didn't really necessarily result in the exact sack number that I think Oregon fans were expecting. But anyways, regardless of all of that, third down and 6, 5 minutes and 44 seconds left. Excuse me. What are you seeing right here, Nick?
But 5 minutes and 40 seconds left, 3rd and 6. I got you, Sam. The first thing I see here is right now, unlike the opposite set, the set that we just looked at, similar personnel, but now we've got the trips, let's say, to the left side. But whatever their terminology is for this, they're overloading the left side right now with the formation having more receivers on that side. So initially, they're trying to threaten you with that off balance to see if you offset. Still, we have the 2 high safeties deep. We're trusting everybody underneath the coverage. And the first thing I notice is if you just pause it, just right off the snap of the ball, just the quickness of the hands and how quickly we get our nose on his initial like right hand on the center as soon as the ball's even gotten back to the quarterback, as soon as the leather is in the quarterback's hand, we already have the advantage right there on the center, and that leverage gives you that push initially. And if it's coming right up the middle right there, your quarterback has to move his feet, get off center. And that's what right there, why he's not looking at what's coming behind him. Initially gets the strip sack right there, loses the ball. And just overall, the jump that we have on the edges, you usually get that. But when you have that kind of twitch and fast inside play from the nose and interior guys, man, it makes the center's day very, very rough.
And I mean, my goodness, you pause it about halfway through the play. I've got it at 5:37 right here. You've got 1, 2, 3 Ducks that are already 5 yards into the defensive backfield. You've got Harmon, who had that great push that you mentioned, but you also have Mateo and Jordan Birch coming along the outside edges. You've still got Lamar and Winston right there, who is in the middle, just kind of taking up the space, got an eye on the quarterback, making sure he can't step up into that pocket. It's so impressive to see the type of push these Oregon defenders are getting. I know we've been harping all this episode, this entire time, about how good the defensive front has been, but my goodness, how could you not when they're changing games the way that they clearly have been so far for Oregon? This next play, Nick, is one that, frankly, I'm excited to get into. It's one that I've been wanting to talk to you about. It's one that I've been wanting to bring up on here literally since the play happens. I think a lot of people are going to know where I'm going with this one, but it's a play we already brought up on the podcast. You've got a 2nd down and 10 situation, 41 seconds left in this second quarter. Oregon clearly trying to get some other points up on the board here before heading into the half. And it's a play that, frankly, came after what would have been the play of the year. If Evan Stewart's one-handed toe tap grab would have counted, that's maybe the play of the year right there. An unbelievable catch made by Stewart. Unfortunately, penalty nullifies it, doesn't count. Oregon has to continue to drive. What do? They eat up more time off the clock, and then you've got this beauty from Dylan Gabriel.
So when we're down here, we've come off a huge big play, and you're just trying to get points right now before the end of the half. A field goal would be nice, but when you're getting down in here, obviously they're thinking right here, they're worried about the pass in this kind of short 2-minute scenario, if you will, with the 2-minute warning on in. And so basically what we have right here is kind of a pass prevent defense, and they're loaded up all the way to the field side. So, essentially, if this were a pass protection, you're going to slide probably. The left guard is going to go and you're going to do a half slide protection to the right. And this is essentially what it looks like they're going to do here. But as soon as the ball snaps, what I love is the center is able to pass off the motion. They already anticipate that with the alignment of the defensive front, that they're going to have to motion over to fill the gap. So passes off the nose over to the left guard and is able to work all the way up to the backer. And even without making contact, he makes the backer have to make a decision, which Dylan Gabriel is able to influence by the way he's able to run as a running back would and set up that block right there so that your center doesn't even have to touch the middle linebacker. He just has to be at the right place at the right time, and that linebacker doesn't. So that's what I love about those kind of plays when you have a draw that just the defense just feels set up for it. They're so ready to just get in the backfield, get the pass rush, and then it's just one-on-one with a backer. And you know what? It wasn't one-on-one because we were able to get a guy and a man that's athletic right down there and Poncho downfield, and love to see it, and a staple of an athletic Oregon center getting downfield and working the next level.
Well, I think something that's so underrated about Dylan Gabriel and his abilities is just how well he uses blockers and how well he uses not even a full block, but like a screen, if you will. Like he's a point guard basketball. I mean, we saw it in that Ohio State game on that big run he had. He was able to use Ferguson's block just enough to be able to get away from the defender. Here you see him doing the exact same thing with Poncho downfield, just being able to kind of run close enough, far enough, be able to follow the block, get away from it, do just enough. It's so impressive. I don't know the last time I remember. I've watched a lot of Oregon quarterbacks that can run. Bo Nix could obviously run. Justin Herbert could obviously run. But a guy who's as aware of where his blocker is and where he needs to be at to ensure his blocker is able to get a good block or even just be in the way enough to create the space. That's a really, really impressive attribute, and one that I think goes a little bit under the radar when discussing the talents of this guy.
And it's not just like the athleticism that just jumps off the film to you. It's so subtle. Like just the hip movement to influence the linebacker to think that, oh, I can jump underneath this block and be able to cheat and get there. And then turning on the dial outside. Like the thing is he has not just kind of like an elusive speed, I think is the best thing to it, is he really sets you up with those first couple steps. And then boom, as soon as he takes off, he knows as he's committed to the run, he's getting to the end zone or getting out of bounds. And you got to love seeing that from a quarterback.
Speaking of something you got to love seeing, Nick, one of the things I love most about this current Oregon team is that they're really looking for every single edge possible. They're looking for every edge, whether it's on offense, on defense, in special teams, in the rule book. They're always looking for something. And I think that if we can flip ahead to this next play here, we're going to see something very, very interesting. Now, in the stadium at the moment, we weren't exactly sure what it was that we saw. We knew there was a punt. We knew they were punting away from where we were. And then there was a penalty that extended the drive. Turns out, as they tend to do, this Oregon coaching staff had a pretty fun little trick up their sleeve. Pretty fun if you're an Oregon fan, at least. Why don't you walk us through a little bit about what's happening on this play that creates a big, big moment and drive extender for this Oregon team?
Yeah, and Will, getting into this, it's, you're trying to steal the game, and it's in the third quarter, and Michigan's only down right now 11 points. They're trying to get some momentum back. This is a point where you just would really love to be able to continue to take the air out of the football, continue to establish yourself on the offensive front. And when you're able to get in the special teams game, this is what I really love the most about this week's Ducks versus them. You got to tell, like, they were able to ask, during the broadcast, well, was this, something the coaches called? This is specifically something that a great special teams coach or a great defensive coach knows about and dials up selectively in their tenure wherever they're coaching. This was brilliant right here. You could hear them as they're dialing it up, calling it over the headsets, confirming over the headset, like just making sure, oh yeah, They lined up right over the center, which you can't do now in special teams in college or even what the NFL level. I'm not sure what the NFL rules are, but there are all these rules, especially, it is. And, having stood right there alongside those long snappers, it's a very dangerous job to be having your head down in between your legs in those scenarios. So it's for very, very good reason these rules are in place. But when you come out with an offensive or a special teams formation, called an offensive formation because that's so much what it looks like when you flank all those guys out there. But it's awesome to see that they were so heads up, and it wasn't a look that they've been given before all season. So they figured, hey, maybe with some backups out there in special team situations, those guys don't necessarily get as many reps. So maybe whether it's personnel based that they had recognized in their film or just something they wanted to try, it was perfect timing and well executed to essentially just in that situation, especially special teams coaching. If you've been sitting there in meetings all week and you've been sitting there, especially against Oregon, all right, they run all these PATs. Here's what we're going to do. Everybody has to man up. If they get in one of these kind of scenarios, find a man, you're on a man. Well, when you get in that scenario right there, what else are you going to do if you're the nose but line up on the center? So it's very, very interesting and a great teaching point, not only for Michigan, but hopefully our own guys know that rule. And if any ever gets thrown at us, they know take one of the gaps and at the snap of the ball, then engage. Don't line up over the center. Very easy fix, but very, very interesting play and something it was funny to hear the announcers sort of be baffled over and kind of just added to the mystique of it. But it was very obvious to me it was something that was coached up all week.
Well, and I'll tell you what, funky formation is a heck of a way to put it. We've all heard of a max protect punt. This looks like a minimum protection punt, really. You've got the long snapper, the three upmen, and then you've got the punter back there. And besides that, you've got five all the way out to one side, one to the other side. Just a completely odd, different formation that completely takes advantage of what you mentioned. And that's having somebody in the game who maybe doesn't have the most experience, the most understanding of this rule book. And of course, yeah, inherently just based off everything that player knows, why wouldn't he line up right there just to be caught up in that moment? So beautifully coordinated by this Oregon football team, these coaches that do such a good job on a day in and day out basis of doing such. This final play we've got, Nick, it's later in the game. This is going to be a 9:03 count just for you and I looking at it right here.
2 minutes and 22 seconds left in the fourth quarter.
And this is exactly right here, a time in the game that I was talking about earlier when it seemed like in previous games, I don't want to say Oregon's taken their foot off the gas, but they haven't really always been the absolute sharpest in these kind of later moments. In this game, they were really driving. And as we said earlier, Emperor said thumbs down. They're driving for the kill right here. That's what they're looking to do. And what I really love about this play, not only the blocking that's able to get out in front, but also Jordan James's ability just to extend a play and to stretch it. Really impressive stuff right here. I would love to hear what you think.
Well, overall, we've got a zone read here that the backside defensive end, the first thing I thought of is, man, with some quarterbacks, they'd be pulling this, but this is really smart on Dylan Gabriel. Fourth quarter, game's already in hand. I don't know whether that's a called thing on field, but that's a quarterback right there that has the longevity. That's how you know this guy has the reps. He's kept himself healthy. Very smart move because really right there, if you watch that backside defensive end and the way he shuffles down, there's a lot of quarterbacks I know and played with that would read that right there as a pull. Mazzoli right now would be running right through there and running right to where the referee is at and using him as a lead blocker to get past that safety. And so, but what you love up here is it doesn't matter which they would have gone with. It would have been a successful play because Oregon has a hat on a hat up front. What we do is we get great ability to lend help on the front side of the play and then get up to the linebacker right away with hands, feet, execution. And even if we can't anticipate where the run is going to go, Jordan James is able to correct it. He's that kind of a back. As long as you're able to get some contact and get essentially meet the defender at the point of contact, having the momentum and controlling where they're going to be versus where you are, man, being in the place and meeting them on contact and getting them off their path to the football. A guy like Jordan James will make you right if you're ever wrong. So as long as these guys keep coming out, matching up this well, man, you gotta love to see it. And overall, I think in this game, it, we just we knew regardless of what the score was going to be that there was an image of how we wanted to play that we hadn't necessarily met yet because of that third quarter, that I really think that was more about than sending a message to Michigan or anyone else. I think it was, again, FIBU. It was a lot about our own team and what we wanted to strive for in our own execution. And it was good to see it, especially if after the Marcus Harper injury. That was a little bit worrisome there for a second. So it was good to see us get out there and really be powerful at the point of contact up front, even with that shakeup at the offensive line and with our best wide receiver.
If you made money on this game betting Oregon to beat the spread, thank Justice Lowe on this play. Thank Justice Lowe on this play, because what he does right here that is so dang impressive. He's lined up in the slot. He pops out at first as if he's going to be a screen recipient. Then what does he do? He starts looking downfield. He looks for somebody to block. The safety comes down to make a tackle he's probably going to make and keep Jordan James to about a 5 or 6 yard gain right here. Instead, Lowe is able to meet him one-on-one, gets a block on him right there, and slows him up just enough for Jordan James to pick up a head of steam. Eventually, the safety gets off the block and makes the tackle about 5 yards away from where he would have. But guess what? At this point, Jordan James already has a head of steam. He already has the power and the speed behind him. He's able to pick up the first down. More importantly, fall down across the 10 before the 2-minute warning, creating a scenario in which Oregon, they can't just knee out the clock to end it. Therefore, you get the late score. You get the backdoor cover that I know made Duck fans a lot of money. So you were somebody who walked away with a couple extra bucks after that one. You know who to thank. Justice Lowe creating just enough space right there for Jordan James to pick up that first down and more.
Yeah, these are the kind of things you'll learn here at the Once a Duck podcast. And man, and being somebody that is in a state where sports betting is not legal, I just got to say, still gamble responsibly. Anyways, man, that was a great game. Any last words that you have to wrap it up, especially since you got to actually experience it?
Well, man, what I will say is Midwest football is such a blast. Anytime you get a chance to go out there and check it out, do so. I know that in the next couple of seasons, either next season, season after, we're going to have to put together another Once a Duck road trip just to be able to get out there, explore some of the sights and sounds this country has to offer. Because I'll tell you what, feel how you will about it. It's got some pretty good college football atmospheres. That's definitely worth going and exploring. So much fun. Again, shout out to everybody in Ann Arbor, every Michigan fan who was fantastic throughout this ball game. Had a great experience out there. And it's always a great experience when you're able to watch Oregon go halfway across the country, be able to get a big win like they did. Also, Warp Speed uniforms are pretty incredible.
Oof, they were. And also setting an attendance record for any Oregon football attendance game. So in our history, so twice the amount of attendees, half as loud. Back to
about right.
Back to big entertaining stadiums, man. We are back in Austin this week. We have a matchup with a team. It was like one of those things I had to remind myself again. Oh yeah, when have we played these guys before? Oh, never. And what's their mascot? A turtle or the Maryland Terrapins or Terps, just for any of you out there, not twerps, but they seem to be like one of the more friendly fan bases on the social media so far. But this at least their offense is not very run friendly so far from what I've been able to watch on film, Sam.
Well, I'll tell you what, I think this Maryland team, it'll be an interesting matchup for Oregon. Is it one they're supposed to win? Yeah, absolutely. I hate to say there's going to be a lot of those type of matchups going forward throughout this year. But also, Maryland, they bring some things to the table that you do have to look out for. I know earlier this week, I should say, there were Oregon players that were interviewed and asked about it, and they were pretty honest about the fact that, yeah, Maryland has some real play on Sunday type of talent out wide. Specifically, the player that I want to be able to mention before we get to anybody else, Ty Felton is a very, very good football player. 73 receptions, 907 yards so far this season, 6 touchdowns. You know, he would love to be able to break that 1,000-yard mark in Autzen Stadium, a place where, admittedly, some pretty historic receivers have had some big games. One that comes to mind would be a Cooper Kupp, for example, but you can name a lot of guys who with NFL experience, NFL time, who played some big games in Autzen. You know, he would love to be able to add his name to that ledger. Obviously, when you're talking about a quarterback like Billy Edwards Jr., is he necessarily the top tier talent that you'll see in the Big Ten playing quarterback? No, maybe not, but he's still a 6'4", 220-pound junior. He's played a bit of football in his career, of course, 2,314 yards so far this season, 13 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. Obviously, you'd like to be able to see a little bit more from your quarterback than that, at least in the turnover and a touchdown ratio aspect. But overall, I think this is a matchup that, like any in the Big Ten, can't take lightly. You got to be ready for. Maryland Terrapins are gonna bring their A game like everybody will that plays Oregon moving forward this season.
Yeah, and I was able to pick up an interview from their coach, Mike Loxley, just talking about a still very interesting approach to, and his confidence in his quarterback there, and understanding the situation of going out and playing the number one team on the road, and that in any situation is going to be difficult. But when you are a team that doesn't have a running game that you could have established this season, and you're coming all the way from Maryland, well, it's going to be a tough task, and he's definitely sounding like his team is. He had some kind of quote that's like they're the team that's crazy enough to play it and have a chance to win it, and that's the kind of thing that always can create a potential upset game if you don't bring your A game and come to play and do everything it takes to win games in this situation. And on top of that, they've had a bye week to study, and the coach already had pointed out that they basically spent their entire bye week working on Oregon stuff, and then basically used the integrated Michigan film to confirm or deny their game plan, and basically just had an extra week of practice to go against Oregon, which is kind of thing for me playing under Coach Kelly is so the antithesis of the kind of things we were with the faceless opponent mentality, and not something you'd want to put out there. But hey, when you're in this situation, it just seems like Coach is out there, trying to generate whatever interest he necessarily can towards this football program when you're definitely significant underdogs on the road. But to combat that, there are coming in and getting to Autzen yesterday, Thursday, to adjust to the time change. But again, that's something we saw the Illinois team do, and it didn't necessarily help. So regardless, I am excited to just see it, how we bounce back again and uphold the concept of FIBU after such a big win on the road that, everybody's, I think our fans are still celebrating, but I obviously, you want to hope the team is already over it, focused and on to the next one. But you only know it as soon as you get to kick off and see them on that football field. And especially with the injuries to Tez and Marcus, the potential for that offense to have some hiccups is there. And this isn't a passing offense you want to do that with.
No, it isn't. It's not the type of offense that you would want to necessarily put in the position to get hot and get going. Obviously, when you look at Maryland's schedule, they've had their ups and downs throughout the season. Started with a 50-7 win over UConn in that season opener, and then immediately followed that up with a close loss to Michigan State. This is a team that can really go either way in that regard. They've lost to Northwestern, they've lost to Minnesota. They also have a win over USC that was a fantastically exciting ball game to be able to watch. I mean, it's not a team that I necessarily would say, hey, this is who's definitely going to come in and give you the upset. But it's not a team I would really look past either. Not somebody I'd be willing to completely ignore. Obviously, they've got players across the field who can make things happen. And defensively, they've even got a few guys, especially some of the linebackers, who can really get in there and cause problems for you. I think their leading tackler, I'm gonna mess up his name, frankly. Ruben Hypolite has been very, very solid for them this season. He's been somebody who absolutely you got to keep an eye out for. 17 tackles on his own, assisted on 22 for a total of 39. And then Wheatland, the other linebacker, 31 total tackles, including 3 sacks on the season. He's tied for the team leader in sacks with the other linebacker, Wyatt. They each have 3 apiece. Those are guys who can definitely get into the backfield. Oregon's going to have to look out for that, especially with the changes that are occurring up front. We know Marcus Harper probably won't be available in this game, so Oregon's definitely going to have to look out for those type of guys who are going to be looking to fly into the backfield.
Yeah, and there's not too many places that you look at on the stat book for these teams and find a place where Maryland is beating Oregon, but one is in turnover ratio. Right now, they've got 15 turnovers forced and 11 turnovers allowed. So Oregon right now is at 9 allowed and 10 turnovers forced. So right there, that's going to be a key component of the game, taking control of the football, making sure we don't give it up, especially now with Tez out in the special teams game on the kick returns, punt returns, making sure we have somebody back there that's comfortable, especially just taking the fair catch and being secure with that, not turning the ball over. And yeah, and again, you say bottling up those linebackers from being able to force big plays and big hits. It's going to be important. Not only that, but when you have the football as a wide receiver, catch and secure it, especially with these referees in the Big Ten, as we've seen so far in these weeks. Maybe it bounced off the ground. Maybe just secure it anyways, and let's see what they call.
I mean, talk to Evan Stewart. I think that's the best thing you can do at this point. It's just, hey, sell it until you hear a whistle. Maybe you'll get away with something. Oregon has a couple of times so far this season, at least. I think really the only other thing you got to, and the turnover ratio is such a good way to put it. I think something that immediately came to mind when you brought that up. What does it say about this Oregon defense that they can be so good and so incredibly talented and be able to hold teams to as few points as they are, and they aren't winning the turnover ratio battle by like a lot? They've forced one more than they've had, this Oregon team at least. Like, I think about Oregon defenses of years past, whether it was like that 2012 team or 2010 team, like so many good Oregon defenses of years past, even the 2019 Rose Bowl team, turnover ratio was a huge stat for those teams.
Yeah.
Something that was extremely necessary in order to create extra possessions and create extra points. This Oregon team's not doing that as much. They're just out there beating teams. They're just out there forcing punts, forcing 3 and outs, beating these teams in different ways.
Yeah. Well, and here's the thing. Statistically, being 79th in overall turnovers hasn't, hurt us because we're 14th overall in defense in points per game, just under 16 points per game allowed. So if you're going to be able to, it's not just teams, certain teams are not taking the risks that they would with guys like Jabbar Muhammad out there in coverage. Maybe he doesn't get the recognition he does. And then obviously just overall, plenty of guys stepping up there, but a lot of teams have, and it is a more conservative Big Ten that we're going into. If this were a Pac-10 year, Pac-12 year, we would have so many interceptions or sack fumbles. But this is just a conference where you've got with the Iowas of the world, a lot of teams are very, very secure. That third down, just all right, gritting it out, punting it, securing the field position. This is just an Oregon defense that's going to take advantage of every single opportunity you give them. So field position just isn't going to be enough. You have to get a couple big plays on them. And so far, after the first couple of weeks, we just really haven't done that unless we've given it to them off a penalty.
Well, Nick, we've only got a few more minutes here, but in this last 5-ish minutes of the episode, we should probably start to go over our keys to the game, and then we'll get to our predictions. You already mentioned the turnovers. I assume that'll somehow be involved, but tell me what some of the keys to this game will be for Oregon to be able to get into Autzen, get out of there with a good, sound win over Maryland.
Again, win the turnover battle. Don't turn the ball over. Very easy. Make the other team turn the ball over. That would be great. Not necessary. But overall, limit the amount of mistakes that we have, especially with the new players we have at certain positions. So if it's Kavika Rogers or if we end up having to move to shuffle some guys around, please just make sure everybody is on the same page up front. If you're a second late but all on the same page, nobody's getting a false start. We're keeping everybody secure. That's the way you start getting kind of a feel and a tempo for this game, and the advantage of Autzen Stadium couldn't hurt. So, number three, and probably the most important thing is I want to see the full fury of this potential pass rush like we haven't been able to see it this season. Going against a lot of run-orientated teams, we haven't really been able to see these guys just go and play a lot of these downs in a pass rush mode already. And once they do, I am imagining that guys like Birch, Uyangalele, and Derek Harmon are going to feed, and we're probably going to see some other guys step up that we have not necessarily seen. Maybe one of those guys in the back that gets a late blitz and is able to come up there completely free because the offensive line isn't even looking at him. This is the kind of game you can expect that because it's a passing offense, sure, but these offensive linemen are not great at pass protection.
Well, and I think one more thing I'll tell you is just, you're going to have some different guys in there this week. Just Tez Johnson being out, the potential of a guy like Gary Bryant coming back from injury, which would be very exciting to see. Honestly, just be able to feed everybody, get the ball moved around a little bit, obviously try to keep everybody as involved as possible. I think they did a very good job in the last game of, taking advantage. When a guy like Tez went down, being able to hit low and hold him a lot. Would love to see those guys both in on the action. Obviously, you want to see Evan Stewart. Obviously, if Gary Bryant's available, you want to see him. The tight ends, we know they're going to get involved. But even if you are one of these freshman receivers who maybe hasn't gotten out on the field too much, now's your opportunity. Now's going to be your chance. There will be options. There will be opportunity. Take advantage of those. I think if Oregon plays relatively clean, doesn't shoot themselves in the foot repeatedly, they'll be able to get out of here with a win. But now, as always, folks, it is time for our predictions, time for us to let you know how we see this Oregon versus Maryland game turning out. Nick, you have the floor. Let us know, what is the final going to be for this game between the Ducks and the Terps?
Yeah, been close these past couple weeks and not quite on point, but I've got one this week. We're finally getting the 41-14, and I have a confidence we're going to be accurate this week. On the money, you can bet it.
Nick's feeling good about that one, though, the 41-14. Nick, is there anything besides just, how symmetrical those two numbers are that's making you really like that? What are you seeing from these teams that makes you feel that way?
Yeah, well, I just figured I had to have some fun with my prediction this week because I wasn't going to throw out a tackle screen touchdown or a special teams fake play, which
I was telling you last week, this might be the week for it.
This, I don't know, man. If you're going to get on the Sports Center top 10 this week, hopefully it's not for a special teams trick play you needed. So against Maryland, that would be a little concerning to me. But overall, I just think that this game, even if it turns out being a slow start with the guys we have and the hosses we have on the defensive front, it's going to be very, very hard to be a passing offense in Autzen Stadium with having the advantage we have the ability to jump the snap there in Autzen Stadium. So I imagine it's going to be a very, very tough day for Maryland and whoever's back there throwing for all four quarters of the game. So just got to imagine with traveling that far too. I couldn't imagine wanting to go and tackle a lot of these guys that we saw, like that Jordan James play we diagnosed, and want to get back on the plane and fly 3 time zones back. So wouldn't be a whole lot of fun. And my prediction is it's not going to be a very fun day for our Terps. What do you think, Sam?
Think of the way I'm leaning on this one. I wrote it down earlier. I'm leaning 45-17 with this one. Number one, me. At this point, I'm always going to say this Oregon team's able to add a field goal in there at some point or another. That just seems like something that's happened throughout this year. Second half of a ball game, you have a long, sustained drive. You want to come out of there with some kind of points. You put out Sappington to knock in a quick 3. I feel like something we'll see again at some point this coming week. I think in a lot of ways, this game, it might it might be another one where Oregon comes out and throws a big, heavy first punch. I really do see the Ducks being able just to pounce all over this team. But that being said, Maryland gets to that 17-point marker because they do have really, really capable receivers on the outside. I wouldn't be surprised if Felton got one. Wouldn't be too surprised, frankly, if also Edwards Jr., their quarterback, he's got 5 rushing touchdowns this season. So if they're able to get anything sustained, put anything together, he is somebody who in the red zone can make you pay with his feet just a little bit. That being said, early score, a late score, and a field goal somewhere in between feels about right for Maryland in this game. Oregon with 45. I think it's going to be something where, again, they're not really taking their foot off the pedal too much. Even when the backups come in, I wouldn't be surprised if we get a second stringer touchdown at some point in this game, something a little late just to let the fans go home with something else to cheer about. 45-17, Oregon's going to get a big victory in this one.
Yeah, and you got to imagine the crowd's going to be into it. Only got 2 guaranteed opportunities left there to be there for Shoutin' Autzen Stadium. So you got to bring it, and got a fantastic uniform combination this week to do it with. Sam, what do you think of the uniforms this week?
I mean, it's about as classic as it can get. Really. Here's the thing. I think when these uniforms got debuted, everybody's first thought was, oh, so the green and the gold goes together perfectly. And yeah, it absolutely does. I think that thick collar on those jerseys, a collar that I think some people have complained about a little bit this year, it fits so well with that gold helmet. Same with the gold cuffs on the jersey. I think the pants and even I'm not positive on it. You couldn't quite tell from the model. But this could be the first time Oregon's rocked the gold socks, which I think would be a lot of fun to be able to see that look coming up out of the shoe. Overall, though, I mean, such a classic Oregon look. If you're somebody who's always clamoring for those gangrene days, this is the uniform you've been looking forward to. This is the exciting one that I think a lot of fans have had in mind. And based off what's coming the rest of the year, I think that this classic look is going to be a real favorite of people's moving forward.
Yeah, and the look itself, it like really does. It's the perfect, at least iteration of, it's not retro. It's a remix because it's definitely it's too fresh, too new. And that's what the retro and the throwbacks would have definitely incorporated the old school ugly white socks. That was definitely a necessity of that. And you had to have, the tape everywhere. Yeah, not enough gold, I guess. Gold is a really hard thing for me to say. Let's just say traditional yellow versus lightning yellow.
There you go.
Gold's for that ugly team up north that also wears purple. So we'll see them here pretty soon. But hey, breaking it down, glad to talk to you, Sam, and glad for all our Wants a Duck fans out there that have been so supportive of us this season. And all our new coming fans, go back, check our old episodes. We've got 5 seasons of this stuff for you and much more to come. Thank you very much for joining us. Sam, any last thoughts?
I mean, folks, as always, be sure you're following at Once a Duck on all the social media, whether it's Twitter, Instagram, whether you're on YouTube, wherever you're following us, at Once a Duck is the way to do it. If you're listening to this, you probably already are, but tell your friends, tell your people you sit next to at Autzen Stadium. Let them know this is the place to come if you want a very unique view of Oregon football, whether it's a guest in here, whether it's tape time, whether it's just us talking about our experiences in or out of Autzen Stadium. It is a heck of a place to get some Oregon football coverage for about an hour a week. So be sure you let people know about that. As always, you can follow him at Nick R. Cody on all social media. Follow me at Samuel101TS for decent football takes and not a lot of other decent takes of any kind.
Hey, great uniform takes.
Hey, I do what I can. I do what I can. I do what I can. People of over a certain age, it's not quite their thing, but we make it work as best as we can. Folks, you see him in the great jacket, you see him in the great button-up. Nick, is there anything else you have before we get out of here for the weekend?
No, just want to shout out everybody that's asked why we don't have a guest this week, and just let them know it's because we're done having our guests stolen by other podcasts. No, just very, very good to have whoever we can have. Let us know who you want to see in future podcast episode down below in the comments. And thank you guys very much for joining us. And as always, once a duck, always a duck. Go Ducks.